Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Welcome to episode 24 of the series filtering out what the Prophet ﷺ never said. Someone asked that about the hadith. Ibn Umar reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, never do people withhold alms or zakah from their wealth, but that a portion from the sky will be held back. Were it not from animals, it would never rain. And again, as we talked about translations before, unfortunately, we don't have very good, reliable translations in the English language of a hadith that are available and easily accessible for people to access. And inshallah, this is a project. If Allah makes it easy for us, inshallah, this is a project that I would like to undertake, but it's a huge project. And the goal behind it is to provide an online database of a hadith where people can search for hadith and they get the Arabic text, the English translation, an accurate, good English translation, the references for that hadith, what are the sources, which books of hadith is found, and the grading or the classification of that hadith, is how authentic it is it not, is it fabricated, weak, very weak, sahih, hasan, what's its authenticity. As well as brief explanation of that hadith, because that helps explain some relevant things pertaining to a specific hadith, the meaning of it, the context behind it, things like that, just very briefly, inshallah ta'ala. So that this hadith that the person is asking about is an authentic hadith. It is an authentically established hadith. And it's part of a longer hadith. Inshallah, I'm going to post in the description this video. I'm going to post a link to the full text of the hadith. But in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, he said, O Muhajirun, there are 5 things that you will be tested with. And I seek refuge with Allah that you live long enough to see them. These 5 things, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned 5 things. And then in that hadith, he'd go through and he'd mention 5 things. And each thing that he'd mention, if people do this thing, then the consequence or the punishment or the result would be this. He'd mention this, the result would be this. 5 things. And one of them is what was mentioned in this specific narration, or this part, which the brother included here, that never do people withhold their zakat of the zakat of their wealth. When people withhold their zakat and they don't pay the zakat that is due upon their wealth, except that rain will be withheld from the sky. And here, as you see the translation that the brother included, never do people withhold alms from their wealth, but that a portion from the sky will be held back. A portion from the sky. It's a bit vague. A better translation is that rain will be withheld from the sky. Rain would be withheld from the sky, And were it not for the animals, no rain would fall on them. And if it wasn't for the animals, rain wouldn't be sent down. It wouldn't come down on them. And so this shows us the seriousness of people withholding their zakat. If people have wealth and the zakat is due upon that wealth, and if they withhold it, if they keep it with themselves and they don't actually give it to the people who deserve it, who it's their right to take that wealth, and they don't pay their zakat, then their punishment would be withholding, the consequence of withholding, just like they withhold the zakat and they don't pay the zakat that's due upon their wealth and give it to the poor and needy people. The punishment of that is that rain would be withheld from the sky. They wouldn't get rain. And again, if they're withholding the zakat of their wealth, then rain would be withheld. As you can see, it's very similar in consequence to their deed. Their bad deed is they're withholding their zakat and not giving it to those who deserve it. They're keeping it themselves. Then rain would be withheld from them as a result, as a consequence for that. And if it wasn't for the animals, they wouldn't get any rain. It shows that the rain that they would get in that situation is because of the animals, showing that because of doing such a bad deed of withholding their wealth. So it shows us the severity of withholding the zakat of their wealth and not paying out their zakat that's due upon their wealth, that this is such a severe and serious sin to the point where that even the animals would deserve to get rain more than they would deserve to get rain because of what they have done. So again, this hadith is authentic and is part of a longer thing. This is one of the 5 things the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. If people do this, then this would happen. If people do this, this would happen. It's very amazing hadith. Very amazing hadith, and shows us the miraculousness of what Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, what he's saying. SubhanAllah, we see it happen. We see it around us. We see the consequence of people committing some of these things, some of these tests and trials, and falling into them. And inshallah, I'm going to include the link to keep this episode short. I'm going to include the link to the full hadith in the description. If you're interested, definitely encourage you all to go and read the full text of the hadith. This is an authentically established hadith. Barakallahu fikum, jazakumullah khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.